Strong. In fact, South Orange is the perfect mixture of both old and new, with its classic structures, including the 100-year-old Village Hall, to its redeveloping downtown, to the people that make up this eclectic village. South Orange has it all. Cablevision would like you to join us in celebrating all that is South Orange. Congratulations.
Well, I've been on the campus, believe it or not, 67 years. I came here as a little boy and started in prep school. Did my prep school, my college, my seminary, and as soon as I was ordained, I came back to work first in the prep and then the university. I came back and began as an officer in 1940. So that's 54 years ago. I can't really believe it, huh? And then before that, my parents lived on the last street in South Orange, Holland Road. But I grew up thinking of South Orange as my village. Used the old Cameron Field when I went swimming and things like that. Used to gather watercress from the brook that used to flow through Grove Park. When that was a huge open field where the college kept its cattle, its cows, its pigs. And so I go back to the days when South Orange Avenue had 4 rows of elms along the curb, and the trolley cars ran along the curb, and the center was for carriages. Unbelievable, huh? Mm-hmm. At the end of our campus, we had a beautiful mansion built by a man who went on the gold rush. But when he got there, he made more money selling shovels, so he didn't go. Became a multimillionaire, and this was his summer home here on Seton Hall. And that red barn that we use for an art studio now is a National Historic Landmark. It's considered so perfect, huh? Now, I can remember, too, in the village, where there wasn't anything much above 2 blocks above the center of the village, just open farm and open houses. My grandmother, who lived on Jefferson Street in Maplewood, which was really a part of South Orange, was married somewhere around 1873. She walked all the way from there on her wedding day across the fields where Columbia High School is now, and was married here in the Seton Hall Chapel. And my great-grandmother had a big factory down there that's still there, just off Parker, before it goes up to Ridgewood. The factory is still there, but I don't know who has it anymore. The man who made the Zip, which takes your hair off, he owned it, and he lived in the house up on South Orange Avenue, where the condos are now. So, and we've been cited, for example, at the back gate of Seton Hall, on Ward Place, there was a cemetery. I had relatives buried there, and when they opened the big Catholic cemetery in East Orange, they moved all the bodies down. And now where the graveyard was is where our staff gets dressed to go to work. That is the grounds crew and people like that, huh? And the original house, I'm sure you know here, was a beautiful mansion built by 2 brothers who then fought and had to break up, and then the college came down and bought the house and the whole estate. And then we sold half of it for Becker-built homes in order to pay our taxes. We were the largest taxpayers in the village at that time. And so the Becker family took that over and built all those houses between the Lackawanna, the most generous railroad in the world, because it's always passing around oranges. East Orange, Orange, West Orange, South Orange. That was a big joke years ago, huh? And the whole side of the mountain, which goes up toward Newstead, I remember when there were no houses there. And the engineer who laid out the roads, who had no education at all, Mike Fitzpatrick, did all the turnings in South Orange Avenue before all those houses were put up there during the 1920s. And I presume you know that South Orange Avenue itself was an old Indian trail. And the Indians used to come down from Pennsylvania to get their wampum in the Passaic River. And their last spot for camping was right here where our theater in the Round is. They call it Chestnut Ridge. And that was the last place where they would camp before they went down the Passaic River to get their wampum. So we go all the way back, huh, to the very beginning of civilization here. I think now they're not important anymore, but Hemlock Falls used to be beautiful when I was a little boy. You'd spend the whole day, and now it's just a little trickle kind of running down, you know. And at the end of that Washington Rock up there, my grandmother and grandfather used to pitch wool before they were married, and I've been told their initials are still carved in the wood up there somewhere. So we're South Orange people, huh?
I used to watch them bring the cattle up off the trains, the freight yard, in 1923, 24. Irvington Avenue was a 2-lane street. And in 1935 they widened it. But we used to have a geodetic monument. It's still at the corner, but it's away out in the middle of Irvington Avenue today, paved over practically. And when I was a little kid, I used to sit on it and watch all the cattle come up every Saturday morning from Maybaum to a big packing house in Irvington. And that was really something to think of, cattle coming up Irvington Avenue. And then I watched them build. This was a big empty lot at the corner. And they built that up in 1927. And across the street, my friend Mr. Kelly, he was in the waste paper business down in Newark, and he built the first set of stores on the other side of the street. That'd be the south side. He built the where the butcher shop is, where them two beauty parlors are, and what the hell's in the other one? Oh, and a Chinese restaurant. And then that was it. This is all 1927 and 28, that buildings took place. Prior to that, on the corner of Irvington Avenue and Ward Place, there was a general store where the drugstore is today. A guy named Harry Sturine and his father and mother ran it. And then around 1924, they sold out to Gustav E. Esbach, registered pharmacist. And he converted it to a drugstore. At that point in time, Westward Place, as that is known, the other side of Irvington Avenue, was a dirt street. One little house. It's still standing down there. It's the first house in on the right. And Willie Lutz lived in there and his father. I don't know where his mother was, I never seen her. Never remember seeing her. And all the rest was just the city dumps. That's all the dumps, ashes and old Fords and cars and junks. And then, about 1928 or 29, we had my good neighbor, Mr. Redfern, who lived across on College Place. And he was the village engineer and village building inspector and village this and village that. Everybody them days had about 20 jobs. And somehow or another, somebody got mixed up and was zoned for single-family homes. We wound up with about 15 two-family houses. I don't know how anything like that could ever happen, but it did. And so that's why that Westward Place to this day is messed up down there. Oh, it's constantly been flooding there since I've been a little kid on a bicycle. I can remember back when I was in grammar school. My aunt lived on Waverly Place. Second house on the left, 224. Every time I used to go over there, man, I had to pull up to that porch at the pedal boy and jump up about 3 steps so not to get my feet wet. But it's been flooding and the town has not done nothing. Engineer after engineer says, well, it's this and well, it's that. The same old story and nothing gets done. To this day, it still floods there.
I've lived here for 68 years in this house, but I had lived for 10 years, the first 10 years of my married life in various places. My husband was a newspaper man, and we had to travel. Then when we bought this house, we started the boys in South Mountain School up the hill, and it was a very much smaller village than it is today. The houses were here. The environment hasn't changed much at all, but the traffic has grown considerably, and there are just more people in the shops than there were 68 years ago. South Orange was more, well, it was more self-contained. We had a bakery, and we had A&P, and we had a fish store. Today, we do not have and we had 2 independent butchers. Today we have ShopRite, Pathmark, big stores.
Well, it was a pretty darn nice town. This street, Scotland Road, had a lot of wealthy people, as you can see from the old big houses. And I was raised by my grandmother, and the community house down there now was called the South Orange Field Club, and that was a private organization. As a kid, grandmother got me to join there, and it was quite a place. I was raised with the elite of South Orange, you might say. Yeah, I had a good time down there. Yeah.
Who were some of the people that you met down there?
Well,
Play ball with?
Well, there was a street a couple blocks over named Terrell, and that was a family name. And there was Underhill. They named the field up there where they play football, high school. Play up there, baseball. You played there too. And well, quite
what
a few.
about the one of the players who went to Southern California?
Oh, I can't think of his name now.
He was a pitcher. He became an outstanding football coach at Southern Cal when they first played.
Oh, well, I'm not sure about that. I know we had a baseball team down there, and they had these two boys, and you could see one of them got a big oil outfit up there in New Haven. Him and his brother, Jonah. Yeah, their name was. And they come down there for another guy, family named Howe. He was an All-American quarterback at Yale. Well, we had a lot of guys around. They were pretty good. We used to have darn good hockey teams, too. And to me, it was all sports. And that's the reason when I went in the third year in high school, my grandmother said, all you're learning is sports, so I'm taking you out and sending you to a school down north where they got no sports.
What school was
So
that?
that's how I went there.
What school was that?
It was called the Merchants and Bankers Business College. And I went down there. No sports then. I had to do a little studying there. Because it cost a nickel each way down there that day. And my grandmother used to give me $5 a week to spend as a young guy. And I got a job through Mr. Duffield, who was head of the Prudential. He's the guy that built this house. And I got a job down there for $6 a week. Then I didn't get the $5. But you see, with the $6, I had to spend 50 cents car fare. So really, I worked all week for 50 cents. So after 2 weeks, I don't like that job, Grandma. I'm coming back and get the $5 and do nothing. And I did.
The village used to have a little red barn on the corner here where Michael Flamos, gas stations, you got the advertisement. And my grandfather, the users, used to run the town roller, but they used to store it here in a little old red barn. Little barn where just about took care of the roller. And then around 1929, 1930, they sold it, knocked the barn down, and Pure Oil, a new gas station, came in from Oklahoma and built the gas station there. So that gave us about 5 of them. Gave us a one on the corner of Waverly Place and Irvington Avenue. That belonged to a lady by the name of Mrs. Katz. And her brother lived next door, Jimmy Curley. He was a cop, one of the best. Died very young. Right after World War II, when I came back, he died about a year later. A wonderful man. And so his aunt sold out, Mrs. Katz. They had a candy store on the west side of South Orange Avenue. Mrs. Katz did. I can remember Halloween was always great there. You always got a good bundle of stuff. And so they built that. That's about 1928, 29, I guess. And then across the street, my other aunt used to live. And that was owned by Dave McCullough. He was in the moving business. His son was ahead of me in school in Our Lady of Sorrows. We used to ride a horse up to school when I was a little kid. You know, they had these, we tied the horses around a piece of wood. And some more guys from down the other end of Arlington Avenue, the Dorms and the Herzogs and them, they too would ride a horse up to school. And I mean, in them days, the Catholic school, we didn't have a Immaculate, none of them, just a Lady of Sorrows.
Yeah, I taught after my husband was gone. Why, then I taught in South Orange Junior High School for 24 years. And teaching was a delight. The children were pleasant. I never knew the word discipline. Once in a while, maybe I might have to say, come, come, young ladies. But there was no thought of disobedience, no rudeness. And people were, they studied hard. They did homework, and lots of it, and expected it. We sent very many of our pupils to colleges. It really was a college graduate town. The mothers and the fathers were good college graduates, and therefore the emphasis was upon good scholarship. And so that made teaching very easy and very pleasant. Shopping was easy. Life was a little easier because instead of buying your milk in the ShopRite, it was delivered by Alderney Dairy, and in the winter in bottles. And in the winter, when it would freeze, the cream on the bottles would come up. Do you remember that, Henry?
Oh, sure. Pop right through the paper cap.
Yes. And we had a confectionery store by the name of Groening's, and we had the most marvelous ice cream. People from all around the various towns would come to South Orange in order to get Groening's ice cream. Town Hall has always been a joy to shop in, and that has not changed. I think the owners today are relatives of the original people who started Town Hall.
There was a family named Toulouse, and they got a street named after them too in town. And I lived right next to the Holy Communion Church up there, and he lived right over there where the middle school is now. Mm-hmm. And when as kids we used to play across the street. There was more. We got bigger. We got out to the field, and then of course they had a 9-hole golf course down there. We could chase over that, but we were putting in the wrong places. Well, then after the war, I didn't join the American Legion or anything. For quite a while, a lot of the guys, they bore me out for not joining. So finally, one day a guy come to me and says, well, you got to join now. I said, why? Well, he says the American Legion is starting the baseball teams. And in the summer, he was going to college and he ran them. My son did. Coached them, didn't you, Ken?
Yes.
And then I joined the Legion. Then after World War II and the boys came home, I joined the, I got to be a commander in the Legion, and then the Veterans of Foreign War started, and I was commander of that. Of the Veterans of Foreign Wars in South Orange. And then baseball, I went to be director of Essex County for the kids for a year. But the guys down there weren't too much interested. They were all political jobs. So I got out of there. I wasn't interested in that. So I had a little fun around.
My father, being born on Ridgewood Road, and was raised by his grandmother at that location. And that is because his grandfather was the first sexton at Holy Communion Church, and which started in 1859. And
yeah, I didn't, well,
that was the beginning of the church, the Episcopal Church in South Orange. And the minister, one of the ministers who was the head of the church prior to World War I, he had choir boys, of which my father was one of them. But he also was a very active man in sports, which gave impetus to my father in the sporting world. And it was because of the efforts of Dr. Cameron that they created a playground, which is today known as Cameron Field. And that's the origination of the playground in South Orange.
Some people may remember there was a famous cartoon called the Tunaville Trolley, and I've been told they sell little models of it. The Tunaville Trolley was a trolley that ran from South Orange Center down where Dunkin' Donuts is now to West Orange Center, and we call it the Swamp Line. And the man who ran the trolley line, his name was Eddie Justiks. I guess he was Polish. And it ran every half hour, just one trolley, and it had narrow gauge, used to teeter back and forth, and all of the rich society girls used to go to a beautiful school called Rosemont Hall up on Ridgewood, and they would get off this little old Tunaville trolley and go up to the school. But the man who did the cartoon took this trolley here, and of course the Tunaville trolley is famous all over the world, but it was a South Orange thing. And the right-of-way is still there. If you look behind houses and going through, there's a brook, and this public service still owns the right-of-way. You see it over on Jefferson Street, especially in Orange, huh? And we used to ride it just for fun, huh? And then in those days, too, the public service had wonderful cars in the summertime. They were open cars, and people used to take them and come up to South Orange and picnic, almost where the station is now. One day my mother caught me riding on the back step of one. I never did that again. But people used to like to come and do that, huh? So it's, and I remember the house that my mother and father bought here at the bottom of South Orange, the land had only changed hands twice from the Indians. The Tuxedo Indians lived here, and they had this whole huge tract. Then a family called the Kilburns bought the tract and broke it up for a development, and my mother and dad had the last house in the tract. So it only had really 3 owners from the time the Indians came. Huh?
Tuxedo Indians?
Yeah, yeah. They're all the way up to Tuxedo in New York. And then it was in Tuxedo, New York, where men wore the short dinner jackets, so they called them the jackets the men from Tuxedo wear, and they call them tuxedos. But they're from our Indians, huh? It's and then, by the way, on the other side, what we call the Montrose section, that was bought by 2 New York millionaires, the Hallameyers and the Astors, and they wanted to develop like a Laurel Park in West Orange, a section of whole beautiful mansions where the New Yorkers could commute. That's the reason for the mountain station, really, so they could get off. And that's why all the streets are curved. They never wanted to be a through street to go anywheres. They wanted to be like a private village. And so there's so many magnificent houses in there that go back to those early days, you know, along Center Street and down Montrose and over Berkeley and places like that. The big house at the corner, Thatcher and Henderson, that belonged to the Henderson family. Next to them was the Thatchers, whose house went back 200 years. And then on the other side where the synagogue is, that was built by a governor of New York, Governor Flowers. And this was his residence and his home. And then when his daughter got married, he built an exact copy of it up on the other side of the mountain across the tracks. So you could get up in the morning and look at his daughter's house and see that burned down, unfortunately. And then there was a big hotel up there, I think, called the Mountain House. And that was the other reason for the railroad station. Vacationers used to come and stay at the Mountain House and then go up to Rock Spring for skiing and ice skating in the wintertime. All kind of put together. I would think you would find out on investigation that the last octagonal house in New Jersey was on, what did we say that street was? Begins with a W. Just below, not Wallace.
Walton.
Walton Avenue. And when I was telling them the other day, there was a famous family here. Their name was McCabe. They made steam boilers, one of which is in the Smithsonian. And the grandfather was an artist. He not only did steam boilers, but he also was a carver of wood and marble. Well, he's gone many years. But that recently died sculptor Tony Smith, who does very non-representational statuary out of automobile fins, he's his great-grandson. And we think that that talent stayed in the family through 4 generations. Well, they moved up from Down Neck with 10 children. The 10 children all got married, and each of the 10 children had 10 children. So South Orange is full of them. Every place you go, there's a descendant of the McCabe's. I was telling you that the other day. Our ball field is named after them. Mr. McLaughlin, who was a city magistrate, his mother was a McCabe. Peter Smith, who was the president of the village, his wife was a McCabe. Mrs. McLaughlin up on South Orange Avenue, her mother-in-law was a McCabe. And Harriet Cudley, who works here and knows more about South Orange than anybody, she also was a McCabe. Her mother was the last girl, first girl to graduate from St. Elizabeth's College, I think in 1905. So this McCabe family, it's rather unusual, as I was telling the other day. In the beginning, South Orange was really inhabited by wealthy non-Catholic Christians whose servants were Catholic Irish. The coachmen, the cooks, the gardeners. Then that phase passed and the Irish came up to the top. Now the Irish phase has passed and the Italians have come up to the top. It's really like a story of America, each one succeeding. When the Italians came, they were the gardeners and the cooks and the carriage drivers. Then they got into the building business, and now I guess the Italians are maybe the largest, by descent of course, the largest segment in the village. And so there was a complete turnover in South Orange. The people who bought the first houses on the mountain bought them on mortgages, and then they were playing the stock market in the crash. And almost every person on the mountain lost their houses, and a whole new crowd came in and took them over 10 cents on the dollar in around 1928, 29. And the whole thing just completely changed.